Hey guys, I'm back on the frontal lobe damage topic because that's a really big one. Your frontal lobe, it does a lot. I've read a lot up medical textbooks and things on the frontal lobe. This book in particular is brilliant. It's an outdated neurosurgical and neurological medical textbook. I got it for $2 from the bookshop. You might ask, what's the point in reading an outdated textbook? And it's better than the alternative, which is not reading one. So I read that kind of stuff for fun. So back to frontal lobe. So things seem to make more sense in your head. Like, you might have a thought and it makes sense in your head, but it's not rational. You could be impulsive, you could want to be impulsive about things. I was pretty impulsive for the first 2 years. An example, I bought a guitar that was worth about $7,000. My wife told me not to, and I bought it anyway. I had to sell it a month later to pay the loan back. It was a nightmare. That's a frontal lobe damage problem, impulsivity, and yeah, things seem to make sense in your head, but rationally they don't make sense to other people. So if you have frontal lobe damage and you're not really good at communicating, especially out in public when you have questions without notice, it's a nightmare. There's two things you'll kind of do. Well, first of all, if you're not good at communicating because you've had a frontal lobe damage, you'll try to find the words, but they won't surrender. You'll get what's called word block. Aphasia can affect that. Word block's terrible, and that's why I read a lot, because Sam Harris, the neuroscientist, said reading helps comprehension, and I trust what he says, so I read a lot. Yeah, so for some reason that you'll try to find the words, but they won't surrender. So then there's two things that are going to happen. You might lie and say that you don't remember an occasion or a circumstance. You might misremember something, and then 6 months later, if your wife or your partner or something, and this happens, trust me, you said this and it happened on that date. And I said, well, I'm really fuzzy on dates. That's what I've got a diary for. I've got a diary I'm using daily now, which is really helping, even helping with my YouTube videos, keeping up to date with things and that. So anyway, I digress. The frontal lobe thing. Yeah, so if you can really listen to people, that's why you've got 2 ears and only 1 mouth, because you should do twice as much listening as you do talking, I believe. I read that in an anthropology book written in 1870, whatever. It was a really good read. So don't lie and say you don't remember, or don't lie and say and try and come up with something, and don't try and come up with an answer, because that doesn't work either. I've tried that numerous times, it just doesn't work. If you say you don't remember, or just say, just give me a sec, mate, I'll have a good hard think about it, and then I'll give you an answer. But from what I learnt from Sam Harris's Waking Up app and his work, mainly, that you can control, if you can notice a problem, it can be fixed, and that's really important. So I'll repeat it. If you can notice a problem, it can be fixed. Any problem. Your brain will rewire, your frontal lobe will rewire at a somewhat slower rate. That's the last to come back. Your frontal lobe's kind of the CPU, if you will, it kind of where everything collects, and your frontal lobe's kind of the executive faculty of your brain. If you're fatigued, your frontal lobe will let you know, because you'll have loose lips, or you'll swear, or you'll say things you shouldn't say. It all depends on how much sleep you've had. I've had stroke people that say, oh, this happens, and I said, well, how'd you sleep? Oh, terrible. I said, well, of course. Sleep's the most important thing after a stroke, especially with frontal lobe stuff, because you have to be well rested to be able to recognise that you're doing something wrong, or as Sam Harris says, notice that you're noticing. As if you were noticing another person. Listen to yourself talk as if you're listening to somebody else, and analyse what you're saying and break it down. Remember what you said and break it down and say, oh, how could I have changed that conversation? Might have been a conversation in public or with a friend or a loved one. So yeah, you can kind of break it down, but notice that you're noticing what you're saying, and then you can move forward from there. If you can't start from there, you can't move forward. You can't get to second base with one foot on first. So notice what's happening first. Listen to yourself talk. Get plenty of sleep. Take naps if you have to. I'll still have an afternoon nap if I have to. Get plenty of sleep. Notice what you're noticing. So with frontal lobe, it's when you're fatigued, it's the first thing to slip up. Maybe your stroke affected hand will go a bit hard or spastic or a bit claw-like, but your executive faculties when you're fatigued are the first thing to go. And the first thing you'll notice is you have loose lips. So notice if you notice that, and work forward from there. Thanks guys for listening. Let me know what you think.